Hey everybody, welcome to the show, or, the video. This is great. We're gonna have some fun tonight. Or today. Or whenever you're watching this. We're talking about something pretty wild, extinct animals. Yeah, you heard me. These are the original ghosters. The animals that left us on red before iPhones were even a thing. They were like, hey humanity, it's been real, but I gotta go, and poof, gone. They didn't even leave a note. Just a bunch of confused paleontologists holding a fossil and going, Did that giant sloth just block me? We're diving deep into the history of creatures that completely vanished from the planet. We're going to explore some of the craziest, coolest, and clumsiest animals that ever existed. We're talking about birds that couldn't fly, tigers that weren't really tigers, and pigeons that threw parties so big they blotted out the sun. It's gonna be a wild ride. We'll look at how they lived, why they, living, and the big question, could we bring them back? Jurassic Park style maybe. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? Get ready for some serious science, some hilarious history, and a whole lot of, wait, that was a real animal? Moments. This is gonna be good. And here's the best part, we're not just digging up old bones, we're gonna imagine what it would be like if these animals were still around today. Picture this. You're walking through Central Park, and instead of a regular pigeon trying to steal your hot dog, it's a dodo. A big, flightless, totally clueless bird just waddling around. Or imagine a tiger in striped pajamas photobombing your vacation pictures. We're going to get weird with it, we're going to get funny with it, and we're going to learn some amazing stuff along the way. I promise you, you'll never look at a museum the same way again. So grab your popcorn, get comfortable, and prepare to meet the animal kingdom's most famous dropouts. The ones that peaked in the Ice Age and then just retired. We've got fun facts that will make you the star of your next trivia night. And what-if scenarios that are so wild, they just might be brilliant. This is the ultimate tribute to the animals that checked out early. It's part comedy show, part science lesson, and all awesome. Are you ready? Let's do this. Let's get into it. Alright, first up, the dodo, the icon of extinction. The dodo lived on the island of Mauritius, a beautiful tropical paradise. It was so chill it forgot how to fly. Scientists think its name, dodo, might have come from a Dutch word meaning sluggard or a Portuguese word for fool. The dodo had tiny, useless wings and a big round body. It had absolutely no fear of humans when they first showed up because it had never seen a predator before. It was just too pure for this world, completely unprepared for what was coming. It wasn't stupid, just naive, evolved in a bubble of safety. So when humans and their animals arrived, the dodo didn't run. It was the ultimate party host being crashed by the most destructive guests imaginable. So how did the dodo go extinct? Dutch sailors landed on Mauritius and found this flightless bird. It was a party fowl. The sailors brought dogs, cats, pigs, and monkeys. These animals explored, hunted, and ate dodo eggs. The dodos were defenseless. From the moment humans arrived to the last confirmed sighting of a dodo was less than 100 years. The party was over, and the dodo was gone. The dodo is gone, but maybe not forever. With cloning and genetic engineering, could we bring it back? Scientists are working on it. We have dodo DNA from museum specimens. The entire genome has been sequenced. The plan? Edit the DNA of its closest relative, the Nicobar pigeon. It's sci-fi, creating a dodo-like hybrid. Colossal Biosciences aims to have a chick soon. Challenges remain, habitat and learned behavior. But the dream of seeing a dodo alive might be a question of when, not if. This is the sad part. We often wish we could have seen extinct animals. But for the dodo, which went extinct in the 1600s, photography hadn't been invented yet, so there are no photos. Every image is based on paintings and written descriptions. Many are inaccurate, drawn by artists who hadn't seen the bird. All we have are artistic interpretations and skeletons. There's no definitive photograph. The true image is lost to time. For a while, some thought it was a myth. It wasn't until bones were discovered that scientists accepted it was real. It's heartbreaking that a species could vanish so completely. It exists as a symbol of extinction itself. That moment is gone forever. A whole part of our world's story has been erased. What if scientists at Colossal Biosciences brought back the dodo? Imagine dodos in the park, forget pigeons. You're eating a sandwich and a dodo waddles over. We'd need dodo crossing signs. People would travel to see the Central Park dodos. They'd be the friendliest city animal ever. You're in a meeting, and a dodo pokes its head in. A world with dodos would be stranger, sillier, and more magical. It would be a second chance. Next up, the Tasmanian tiger. It wasn't a tiger but a marsupial, like a kangaroo. The world's largest carnivorous marsupial, it looked like a dog with tiger stripes. They called it the Tasmanian tiger because of the stripes on its back, but also got the name Tasmanian wolf because of its dog-like shape. It had the body of a dog, the stripes of a tiger, and the pouch of a kangaroo. Its jaw could open incredibly wide but was actually pretty weak. By the time Europeans arrived, they were only found on the island of Tasmania. They were shy, nocturnal hunters, the introverts of the predator world. They were solitary creatures, adding to their mysterious vibe. The thylacine was always ready for a formal event, wearing its permanent striped pajamas. No two thylacines had the exact same pattern. It was a unique, beautiful creature, a true one of a kind. So what happened to this incredible creature? Why did the striped pajama dog disappear? Well, this story is a classic tragedy of misunderstanding and bad PR. When European settlers arrived in Tasmania in the 19th century, they brought sheep with them, lots and lots of sheep. And when you're a farmer, your sheep are your livelihood. So when some of those sheep started disappearing, the farmers needed someone to blame. And they looked around and saw this weird dog-like thing with a giant mouth and stripes, and they said, "That guy, it was definitely that guy." The thylacine became public enemy number one. The government even put a bounty on its head. You could get paid for every thylacine you killed. It was a full-on war against an entire species. People hunted them, trapped them, and poisoned them relentlessly. It was a systematic campaign to wipe them out, all based on the belief that they were notorious sheep killers. The thylacine got a reputation as a vicious monster that was a threat to the entire farming industry. They were painted as villains in a story where they were just trying to survive in a rapidly changing world. It's like being blamed for eating all the cookies when you're allergic to chocolate. But here's the quirky, sad fact. Recent studies of their jaw structure and skeletons suggest the thylacine probably wasn't even strong enough to bring down a healthy adult sheep. Its jaws were weak, and its frame was relatively light. It was built to hunt smaller prey, like wallabies, birds, and possums. Sure, it might have occasionally snagged a weak or sick lamb if the opportunity arose, but it was not the super predator it was made out to be. The real culprits for most of the sheep losses were probably wild dogs and just plain old mismanagement. The thylacine was framed. It was a case of mistaken identity on a tragic, species-ending scale. The fear and paranoia of the settlers combined with the government bounty sealed the thylacine's fate. They were hunted to the brink of extinction. By the early 20th century, they were incredibly rare. The campaign against them was so successful, so total, that it completely annihilated them from the wild. It's a heartbreaking example of how fear and misinformation can lead to irreversible consequences. The thylacine wasn't a monster, it was just a scapegoat. Or I guess a scape-wolf tiger thing. Okay, so the thylacine was wiped out by a bounty. Another bummer. But just like with the dodo, the scientists are on the case. The idea of bringing back the Tasmanian tiger has been around for a while, and it's gaining serious momentum. This isn't just a fantasy, it's a major scientific project. The same company working on the dodo, Colossal Biosciences, has also announced they are taking on the thylacine. They're putting money and brainpower into making this happen. The sequel, Thylacine 2 Electric Boogaloo, could actually be a thing. This is so exciting. The plan is similar to the dodo project, but with a different set of challenges. First, they sequence the thylacine genome from a preserved specimen, a joey or baby thylacine that was kept in a jar of alcohol for over 100 years. Amazing, right? Now they have the genetic blueprint. The next step is to find the closest living relative. For the thylacine, that's a small, mouse-like marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. I know it's not quite as glamorous as a Nicobar pigeon, but that's science for you. It's the closest genetic match we've got. The process would involve taking the DNA from a dunnart and editing it gene by gene to match the thylacine's blueprint. It's like taking the script of a comedy movie and editing it to become an action blockbuster. You change the key parts until you have a whole new thing. Then they would create an embryo and implant it into a surrogate mother, probably a dunnart or a similar-sized marsupial. If it all works, a tiny thylacine joey would be born, and it would have to crawl into its surrogate mother's pouch. The scale difference is mind-boggling. It's like a human baby being raised by a squirrel. Of course, the goal isn't just to make one and put it in a zoo. The ultimate vision is rewilding. To reintroduce the thylacine to Tasmania to help restore the ecosystem. As a top predator, it played a crucial role in keeping other animal populations in check and maintaining a healthy balance. Bringing it back could have huge environmental benefits. It's an ambitious, almost audacious plan, filled with incredible scientific hurdles. But the thought of seeing a striped pajama dog roaming the Tasmanian wilderness again? That's a powerful motivator. The comeback story is in the works. This is where the story gets incredibly haunting. Unlike the dodo, the thylacine survived into the age of photography and even film. We have pictures, we have video, we can see what we lost. The last known thylacine in the world was a male named Benjamin. He lived his final years in the Beaumaris Zoo in Hobart, Tasmania. And in 1933, a naturalist named David Flea captured 62 seconds of black and white footage of him. This short, silent clip is the only moving image we have of this amazing animal. It's absolutely mesmerizing and honestly pretty heartbreaking to watch. In the footage you can see Benjamin pacing around his enclosure. You see him lie down in the sun, you see him yawn, that impossibly wide yawn, you see him sniffing the air, you can see his stripes, the way he moves, the stiffness in his tail. It's not a drawing or a skeleton, it's a living, breathing creature trapped in a cage, the last of his kind on Earth. He looks restless, lonely. There's a profound sadness in knowing that you are watching the final moments of an entire species' existence, preserved forever on film. It's a ghost on a screen. The story of Benjamin's death is the final, tragic irony. On September 7, 1936, he died. The cause? Believed to be neglect. He was accidentally locked out of his sheltered sleeping quarters and died from exposure to the cold Tasmanian night. The last Tasmanian tiger died because of a simple, careless mistake. And here's the real kicker. Just 2 months before he died, the Tasmanian government had officially granted the species protected status. The protection came too late. The law was passed, but there were no thylacines left in the wild to protect. Benjamin was the end of the line. That footage of Benjamin is one of the most powerful conservation documents in the world. It's a stark reminder of our impact. It's not an abstract idea of extinction, it's a face. A pacing, striped, lonely face. It shows us exactly what we're trying to get back. When you watch that clip, the de-extinction project doesn't seem like a sci-fi fantasy anymore. It feels like a mission. It feels like we owe it to Benjamin to try to correct this mistake, to try to bring his kind back from the silent black and white world of that old film and into the full color world of today. Let's spin this forward. Let's get optimistic. The scientists succeed. The thylacine is back. What happens next? We're not just talking about one in a zoo, we're talking about rewilding. So, what happens when the Tasmanian tiger returns to Tasmania? First off, the tourism industry would go insane. Come to Tasmania. See our beautiful landscapes and our formerly extinct but now they're back and super cool striped dog things. It would be the ultimate ecotourism destination. People would go on thylacine spotting tours hoping to catch a glimpse of this nocturnal ghost. But what about the locals? Would farmers be worried again? Probably. There would have to be a massive education campaign. Folks, we swear they mostly eat wallabies. Your sheep are probably fine. Mostly. Maybe invest in a bigger fence just in case. There'd be thylacine-proof garbage cans. You'd have news reports like, a thylacine was spotted wandering through a suburb of Hobart last night. Residents are reminded not to leave small pets unattended. He seemed to be looking for a good coffee shop. It would be a whole new dynamic between humans and wildlife. Imagine going camping in Tasmania. You're sitting around the fire, and you hear a strange cough-like bark in the distance. That's the thylacine. It wouldn't be scary, it would be amazing. It would be like hearing history come alive. The ecosystem would change too. As a predator, it would help control populations of wallabies and kangaroos, which in some areas are overgrazing the land. It could help bring the whole environment back into a healthier balance. It would be the ultimate ecological comeback story, a testament to the idea that we can fix what we broke. And think of the pop culture impact. The thylacine would be the new IT animal. There would be movies, cartoons, merchandise. Thylachinos, the new breakfast cereal with stripy marshmallows. It would be everywhere. But beyond the jokes, its return would be a powerful symbol of hope. It would mean that extinction doesn't have to be a one-way street. That we can be custodians of nature, not just destroyers. A world with the thylacine back in it is a world that's a little wilder, a little more mysterious, and a whole lot more interesting. I'm rooting for you, you weird, wonderful, striped pajama dog. All right, settle down, welcome back. Next up, the passenger pigeon. Their flocks were unbelievably huge, blocking out the sun for days. Imagine that, it's like they had a serious case of FOMO. These birds didn't just travel in groups, they the group. Flocks a mile wide and 300 miles long, billions of them. The sound of their wings was described as a roar. They would settle on forests in such numbers that huge tree branches would just snap under their weight. They'd land, the forest would just sort of collapse, and then they'd move on. They're blotting out the sun, breaking forests, and making a racket. They were a force of nature. Okay, time for a fun fact. These pigeons were fast, like fighter jets. They could fly at 60 miles per hour. Their flocks were the size of Delaware. Imagine a high-speed aerial ballet with a billion friends. They moved together, twisting and turning in the sky. They would take over an entire forest, creating a sprawling bird city. One nesting site in Wisconsin covered 850 square miles. Despite their numbers, each pair laid only one egg per nesting season. Their strategy was safety in numbers. But it depended on them always having the numbers. How did a bird that numbered in the billions just disappear? They were easy to hunt, and their habitat was disappearing as settlers saw them as a cheap, endless food source. People genuinely believed they could never run out. The hunting became commercialized. It was big business. They were shipped to big cities to be sold in markets. People couldn't comprehend that something so abundant could ever be threatened. Forests were cut down, and their lifestyle depended on these woodlands. The decline was shockingly fast. People went from seeing skies black with pigeons to seeing none at all in a single lifetime. The party was officially over. So can we bring back the passenger pigeon? De-extinction is a hot topic, and the passenger pigeon is a top candidate because we have their DNA. We have their genetic blueprint. The idea is to edit passenger pigeon DNA into the genome of its closest relative, the band-tailed pigeon. Revive and restore plans to identify unique passenger pigeon genes and use CRISPR to modify a band-tailed pigeon egg. But even if we can create the bird, can we recreate the flock? Is it right to bring back a species to a world so different from the one it left? Should we let sleeping birds lie? Let's imagine scientists bring back the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon is back. What would that look like in 2024? The sky would be insane. Imagine sharing the skies with a flock the size of Rhode Island. Your daily life would change. Forget a single bird pooping on your car. We're talking aerial assault. You'd have to walk around with an umbrella on a sunny day. But honestly, it would also be incredible. Seeing the sky ripple and shimmer with color and movement. It would be the greatest show on earth. It would be a constant living reminder of our past mistakes and our present power. It would be a symbol of redemption. And yeah, it would be really, really messy. But maybe a little mess is worth it to have that kind of magic back in the world. Next, the great auk. Rocking the tuxedo look way before penguins. Tall, handsome, classic black and white formal wear. But he's not a penguin, from a different family of birds. It's a classic case of convergent evolution. The great auk was the only modern species in its genus, Penguinus. In fact, the word penguin might have originally been used for the great auk, the original flightless bird of the north. They were built for the water, not the land. They were torpedoes. So you have this distinguished flightless bird, the king of the North Atlantic. They were the original non-penguin penguins, a bird so cool they named penguins after them. Fun fact time. Here we go. The great auk was flightless, but their wings were perfectly designed for swimming, propelling them through the water. They could dive to insane depths, possibly 250 feet, and hold their breath for up to 15 minutes. They were monogamous, sticking with a partner for life, and returned to the same nesting spots. They laid only one egg per year. Because they were so isolated, they had no fear of humans, which wasn't a great survival strategy. Each egg had a unique pattern, believed to help parents recognize their egg in crowded colonies. So, what happened to our dapper, deep-diving non-penguin? Well, it's another really sad story of human impact. For thousands of years, indigenous people and Vikings had hunted the great auk sustainably. But when European sailors began exploring the North Atlantic, they discovered these huge colonies of fearless, flightless birds. To them, the auks were just a walking food supply. They were an easy source of fresh meat, and their eggs were a welcome treat. It was a tragedy waiting to happen. The hunting pressure just grew and grew. Their feathers became valuable, their bodies were rendered down for oil, and they were even used as bait for fishing. The demand was relentless. The major breeding colonies were systematically destroyed, one by one. By the early 1800s, the great auk was becoming incredibly rare, and as the bird became rarer, it became more valuable to collectors. Rich people and museums in Europe wanted to have a stuffed great auk or an auk egg in their collection, so a hunt began for the last few individuals. On June 3, 1844, 3 sailors found the last known breeding pair of great auks and killed them both. The last pair, and their last hope for a future, wiped out for the sake of a collection. It is one of the most pointless and heartbreaking extinctions in history. The great auk was declared extinct. Could we bring back the great auk through de-extinction? The science is similar to the passenger pigeon. The closest living relative is the razorbill. The plan is to use preserved auk DNA to edit the genome of a razorbill embryo, tweaking genes over generations. The North Atlantic is different now, with more traffic and pollution. Revive and Restore is leading the charge. They argue bringing it back would restore the North Atlantic ecosystem. Critics say the money could be better spent on saving current species. It's a dilemma. There's a pull to undo that specific wrong. De-extinction is uncharted territory, like playing God. What if the great auk is back? Wildlife documentaries would be amazing. David Attenborough would be all over it. Auk watching tours, gift shops full of plushy auks, a symbol of hope for conservation, inspiring a new generation of scientists. But how would they interact with the modern world? We'd have to create protected zones and be better stewards of the ocean, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. A second chance, teaching us a powerful lesson about responsibility. Get ready for this head-scratcher, the quagga. It's like a zebra that ran out of ink halfway through printing. Classic stripes on its head and the front of its body, then it fades to brown. For a long time, scientists were totally confused. Was it its own species? They lived in South Africa. The name quagga comes from the sound they made, like quahaha. They were a living optical illusion, a creature that defied easy categorization. For centuries, they were a successful and unique part of that incredible landscape. It's a shame we didn't get to appreciate their weirdness for longer. Fun fact time, let's talk quagga. For over 100 years, a debate raged: separate species or plain zebra subspecies. The mystery was solved in 1984 with DNA from a preserved skin, a first for extinct animals. Turns out, quaggas were just zebras with a unique paint job. Farmers in South Africa even tried to tame them. They were more docile than other zebras. They used them as guard animals because of their hearing and aggression towards predators. Quaggas even pulled carriages in London, becoming celebrity attractions. Only one quagga was ever photographed alive. That's our only photographic link to a living, breathing quagga. Why did the quagga disappear? Dutch settlers saw them as competition. They were hunted relentlessly for meat and hides. People didn't realize they were a distinct zebra type. There was no conservation. The last wild quagga was shot in the 1870s. The last quagga, a mare, died in an Amsterdam zoo in 1883. The quagga was extinct, a unique branch pruned away. But wait, the story of the quagga has a twist, a really cool modern sci-fi twist. Because the quagga was a subspecies of the plain zebra and not a separate species, its genes are still around. They're just mixed up inside the modern plain zebra population. So, in 1987, a group of scientists in South Africa started something called the Quagga Project. Their goal? To bring the quagga back from extinction through selective breeding. Not with gene editing or cloning, but with old-fashioned breeding. It's like de-extinction, but the low-tech, all-natural way. Here's how it works. The scientists went out and found plain zebras that showed some quagga-like characteristics. Things like less striping on their hind legs, a brownish tint to their coat, and so on. They figured that the genes that created the quagga's unique pattern were still present, just recessive and scattered. So they brought these carefully selected zebras together and started breeding them. With each new generation of foals, they would select the ones that looked the most like a quagga and breed them with each other. It's a process called breeding back. They are literally trying to reverse evolution, one generation at a time. And guess what? It's working. It's actually working. After several generations, they have produced zebras that look remarkably like the old quagga. They have the striped head and neck and the plain brown rear. They call these animals Rau quaggas, named after the project's founder, Reinhold Rau. It's an incredible achievement. They have a herd of these animals living on reserves in South Africa, looking and acting just like their extinct ancestors might have. It's one of the most successful breeding back projects ever attempted. Now, there is some debate, of course. Critics say that these new animals are not real quaggas. They just look like them. They argue that we can never be sure if we've recreated the exact genetic makeup or the temperament or the behavior of the original. But the project's scientists say that since the quagga was just a variety of plain zebra, if it looks like a quagga and has the DNA of a plain zebra, then for all practical purposes it's a quagga. It's a fascinating philosophical question. How do you define a species? Is it just looks? Is it just genes? Or is it something more? Either way, it's amazing to see those faded stripes on the African plains again. Okay, so let's dream a little. The Quagga project is a massive success. They're officially back. What would it be like to have quaggas in the world today? First of all, zoos would be so much more interesting. You'd go to the zebra enclosure and it wouldn't just be one kind of zebra, you'd have the regular ones, and then right next to them, you'd have the quaggas. The signs would be amazing. Plains, zebra, a classic timeless look, quagga for the zebra who can't commit to a full body pattern. It would be a great lesson in genetics and evolution for kids. Imagine going on a safari in South Africa. You're bumping along in a jeep and you see a mixed herd of wildebeest, springbok and zebras. But then your guide points and says, "And look over there. That's a herd of quaggas." Seeing that animal back in its native land would be unbelievable. It would be like seeing a ghost, a beautiful half-striped ghost that has come back to life. It would add a whole new layer of magic and history to that landscape. It would be a living link to a past that we thought was lost forever. And think about the symbolism. The quagga was destroyed by settlers who saw it as competition. Bringing it back in modern South Africa through a project led by South African scientists is an incredibly powerful act. It's about more than just an animal. It's about reclaiming a piece of natural heritage that was taken away. It's a story of healing, of restoring a missing piece of the puzzle. It would be a source of national pride, a symbol of a new relationship with the natural world, one based on preservation and restoration instead of exploitation. Ultimately, having the quagga back would be a powerful, hopeful story. It would show us that sometimes extinction doesn't have to be forever. It would show us that with dedication and a little bit of genetic luck we can undo some of the damage we've done, and it would give us a chance to finally appreciate this wonderfully weird animal for what it was. Not a pest, not a resource, but a unique and beautiful creature that makes our world a more interesting place. Plus, who doesn't love an animal with a mullet? It's a win-win. Picture a manatee, now imagine it the size of a school bus with the ambition of a rock. That, my friends, is the Steller's sea cow, the heavyweight champion of doing absolutely nothing. Its daily schedule was probably just wake up, float, eat some kelp, and take a nap. Discovered in 1741, these gentle giants could reach 30 feet long and weigh up to 10 tons. Part of the Sirenia family, they were adapted to the cold Arctic waters. They were nature's reminder that sometimes the best thing you can do is just float. Fun fact, Steller's sea cows didn't have teeth, instead they had massive bony plates to mash kelp. Imagine eating a steak with just your gums. They were gentle herbivores, exclusively eating kelp in shallow waters. This made them easy targets for hunters. Nature made them extra gentle, famous last words, Amos. Georg Steller discovered Steller's sea cows in 1741. By 1768 they were completely extinct. It took humanity only 27 years to wipe them off the face of the earth. Steller's crew told everyone about this giant, slow, delicious animal. Hunters thought a floating buffet that doesn't fight back. The sea cows were hunted relentlessly for their meat and fat. It's one of the most tragic stories in the history of extinction. So, in just under 3 decades, every last one was gone. We found this incredible, unique creature, and our first instinct was to turn it into sandwiches and lamp oil as quickly as possible. It's a cautionary tale. They're gone, wiped out in 27 years. But can we bring back the Steller's sea cow with 21st century science? Probably not. We don't have any good DNA. All we have are bones and maybe some dried skin fragments. Even if we magically got the DNA, what would carry the baby? The closest relative, the dugong, is 1/10 the size and lives in warm waters. It's just not going to work. It's a shame because the extinction is 100% on us. The practical challenges are gigantic. Okay, but let's do what we do best here. Let's ignore science and reality for a minute. What if we could bring them back? What if Steller's sea cows were a thing again? Imagine going to the beach in, say, Alaska or Northern California. You're setting up your umbrella, you're putting on sunscreen, and then you see it. A dozen giant blubbery sea cows just sunbathing on the sand like enormous leathery tourists. They're not doing anything, just vibing. Maybe one of them occasionally rolls over with a soft groan. It would completely change the beach experience. Forget worrying about sharks. The biggest danger at the beach would be a sea cow accidentally rolling onto your cooler. Lifeguards would have new signs. No swimming within 50 feet of napping sea cows. And please do not use sea cows as a flotation device. You know people would try it. Someone would absolutely try to climb on top of one for an Instagram picture. The sea cow wouldn't even notice. It would just be like, huh, feels like a bird landed on me. Anyway, back to my nap. It would be the ultimate beach chill zone. Think about the tourism. Come to Steller's Bay, home of the world's laziest and largest beach bums. People would travel from all over the world just to sit near them and absorb their calming, do-nothing energy. It would be better than a yoga retreat. You just sit there, watch a 10-ton animal do absolutely nothing for 6 hours, and you'd go home feeling completely at peace with the universe. It would be a form of meditation. We wouldn't need wellness apps anymore. We'd just have live streams of sea cows floating. I'd subscribe to that. And the best part? They'd be great for the environment. They would just munch on overgrown kelp forests all day, keeping the marine ecosystem in balance. They're like giant, adorable underwater lawnmowers. So you'd have clearer waters, healthier coastlines, and a new tourist attraction that literally just sleeps and eats. It's a win-win-win. Bringing back the stellar sea cow would make our beaches weirder, calmer, and a whole lot more crowded with giant, lovable sea potatoes. And honestly, I think we'd all be better for it. Let's make it happen, science. Get on it. Alright, this next story is it's a roller coaster. It's a story of hope, science, tragedy, and honestly, it's a little bit of a facepalm moment. Meet the Pyrenean ibex. This was a species of wild goat that lived in the Pyrenees Mountains between Spain and France, and here's the headline. This animal holds the very special, very weird distinction of being the first animal to ever be brought back from extinction. Hooray, right? Science did it, we conquered death. But it also holds the distinction of being the first animal to go extinct twice. Yeah, it's a real one step forward, two steps back kind of situation. It's like that friend who dramatically announces they're quitting social media forever, deletes all their accounts, and then you see them pop back up with a new profile 48 hours later, only for them to delete it again the next day. The Pyrenean ibex is that friend. It made the biggest comeback in history, took one look around and was like, you know what? Nah, I'm out. It's the ultimate thanks, but no thanks. It's such a bizarre and fascinating story. We actually did it. We brought an animal back from the dead, and it lasted for a grand total of about 7 minutes. You can't make this stuff up. Imagine the scientists in the lab. They've worked for years. They finally have a successful clone. It's born. It's breathing. Champagne corks are popping, people are crying, they're probably already writing their Nobel Prize acceptance speeches. And then 7 minutes later, the intern is like, guys, you might want to come look at this. And just silence. The shortest celebration in scientific history. It's like scoring the winning touchdown and then immediately fumbling the ball in your own end zone for a safety. A glorious, record-breaking failure. The Pyrenean ibex itself was a pretty cool-looking goat with these big, curvy horns. But its real claim to fame now is its spectacular blink-and-you'll-miss-it return to existence. It went from being a symbol of hope for de-extinction to being a symbol of, well, how incredibly difficult and fragile this whole process is. It's a story that has everything: drama, suspense, a shocking twist, and a very, very short-lived main character. So buckle up, because the story of the ibex's 7-minute comeback tour is a wild ride. Let's get a fun fact in before we get to the cloning drama. The Pyrenean ibex was one of 4 subspecies of Iberian ibex, but it was the one with the biggest, most impressive horns. They were sexually dimorphic, which is a fancy way of saying the males and females looked different. The males had these huge, thick, curving horns that could grow up to 3 feet long, while the females had much smaller, shorter horns. The males were basically the rock stars of the mountain, showing off their headgear, while the females were, more practical. Probably because they weren't constantly getting their horns stuck in trees. Now, for the extinction story. The last naturally born Pyrenean ibex was a female named Celia. I love that she had a name. It makes it so much more personal. She was the last of her kind, living out her days in Spain's Ordesa National Park. Scientists knew she was the end of the line, so in 1999 they captured her, took some skin cells from her ear for cloning purposes, very important for later, and then released her back into the wild with a radio collar. They were tracking the very last member of a species. Can you imagine that pressure? Don't lose her, guys. Tragically, in January of 2000, Celia was found dead. She had been killed by a falling tree. I mean, come on, that is the most random, most unlucky way for an entire species to end. It's not a meteor, it's not a volcano, it's just bad luck with timber. It's like the universe has a really dark sense of humor. The last Pyrenean ibex on Earth, gone because of a freak lumberjack accident without the lumberjack. With Celia's death, the species was officially declared extinct. The end. Or was it? Dun dun dun. So there you have it. A species that dwindled down to one single lonely individual who then met her end in the most bizarrely mundane way possible. It's a sad end to a long history. These animals had roamed the Pyrenees for thousands of years, and it all came down to one goat and one clumsy tree. But remember those skin cells they took from her ear? Well, those little cells were about to get their moment in the spotlight. Celia's story wasn't quite over yet. She was about to become a posthumous pioneer. Okay, so Celia is gone, but her cells are in a lab. The dream is alive. A team of Spanish and French scientists got to work. Their plan was ambitious, straight out of science fiction. They would take the nucleus from one of Celia's skin cells, that's the part with all the DNA, and implant it into a goat egg that had its own nucleus removed. Then, they would implant that egg into a surrogate mother, which in this case was a domestic goat, or sometimes a Spanish ibex hybrid. They created hundreds of embryos. It was a massive, high-tech undertaking. This was it, the first real attempt to reverse extinction. For years, the project saw failure after failure. Most of the pregnancies didn't take. Of the 57 implanted embryos that were successful, only 7 resulted in pregnancies that went to term, and of those 7, 6 ended in miscarriages. The odds were just brutal. It shows you how incredibly complex and delicate life is. You can have all the right ingredients, all the fancy lab equipment, but making it all work is another story. It's like trying to bake a cake using a recipe from a language you don't speak. You're bound to end up with a few mishaps. But then, in 2003, it happened. One surrogate mother carried her cloned embryo to term. The scientists held their breath. This was the moment of truth. And then, a female Pyrenean ibex kid was born via cesarean section. It worked. They did it. For the first time in human history, an extinct animal was alive again. Can you imagine the scene? The cheering, the high fives, the sheer, unadulterated joy of seeing this little creature, a carbon copy of Celia, take its first breath. It was a miracle of modern science. A creature that had been gone for 3 years was back. The news was monumental. It was on the front page of papers around the world. We had done it. We had played God, and for a moment it seemed like we had won. This little clone, this tiny baby ibex, represented a new era. An age where extinction wasn't necessarily forever. It was a symbol of hope not just for the ibex, but for the dodo, the mammoth, for every creature we had lost. The future of conservation seemed to have changed in an instant. But, as we know, the celebration was brief. Very, very brief. So, the baby ibex is born, the world is celebrating, and then reality hits. The clone, this little miracle of science, was born with a severe defect in its lungs. It had an extra lobe that was just solid. It couldn't breathe properly. The scientists watched in horror as the newborn animal gasped for air, struggling to survive. Despite their best efforts to help it, there was nothing they could do. And just 7 minutes after it was born, the cloned Pyrenean ibex died from respiratory failure. And just like that, the species was extinct again. Can you even process that? 7 minutes, that's how long the Pyrenean ibex's triumphant return to Earth lasted. It's shorter than most pop songs. It's shorter than the time it takes to make microwave popcorn. The entire emotional arc, from the joy of its birth to the tragedy of its death, happened in less time than a commercial break. The species went from extant back to extinct before the scientists could even properly update its Wikipedia page. It's the most tragic blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment in the history of life on Earth. A speed run of existence. The cause was likely due to faults in the cloning process. Cloning is still a very imperfect science. The DNA from Celia's adult cells might not have been programmed correctly to develop a new healthy animal. It's a reminder that just because we have the blueprint, the DNA, it doesn't mean we know how to build the house perfectly every time. There are so many tiny, intricate steps in development, and if even one goes wrong, the results can be catastrophic. The little ibex clone was a heartbreaking testament to that fact. No further attempts have been made since. The project was deemed too difficult, too expensive, and perhaps too emotionally draining. The cells of Celia are still preserved, so it's possible that one day, with better technology, scientists might try again. But for now, the Pyrenean ibex remains the ghost of the mountains, the animal that came back to life just long enough to die a second time. It's a powerful, sobering lesson. De-extinction isn't a magic wand. It's a long, hard road, and sometimes, even when you reach the finish line, it can vanish right before your eyes. Alright, let's end this on a cheerier note. Let's fire up the imagination machine. What if it had worked? What if the clone had survived, and we were able to build up a healthy population of Pyrenean ibexes? What if they were back in their mountain homes right now? Imagine being a mountain climber in the Pyrenees. You're scaling a cliff face, you're tired, you're hanging on by your fingertips, and then you look over, And there's an ibex just chilling on a tiny ledge next to you, chewing cud. Just looking at you like, hey Steve, nice view, huh? They would be the ultimate climbing companions. They're masters of the mountain, effortlessly leaping from rock to rock. They'd probably look at our ropes and harnesses and just shake their horned heads in pity. Look at this guy. Needs all this gear just to get up a hill I climbed for a snack. You could have guided ibex tours. Forget Sherpas, you'd hire an ibex to show you the best and safest paths up the mountain. They'd probably communicate by just staring at you until you figured out you were about to step on a loose rock. Think of the social media posts. No more boring summit selfies. Now it's a selfie with your ibex buddy, both of you looking majestic against the sunset. #ibex adventures, #mountain goat life, #my climbing partner is better than yours. They would become local legends. Towns at the base of the mountains would have ibex-themed everything. Ibex inns, the Gilded Goat Tavern, horn-shaped pastries. It would be a whole new cultural identity for the region, built around their resurrected icon. And it would be a huge win for the ecosystem. They'd be back to doing their goaty business, eating shrubs, keeping the vegetation in check, and generally making the mountains feel more alive. It would be a story of triumph, a testament to human perseverance. Instead of being a cautionary tale, the Pyrenean ibex would be a living, breathing symbol of hope. It would prove that we can fix our past mistakes. So here's to you, Celia, and your 7-minute clone. Maybe one day, your descendants will be judging our climbing skills from a rocky perch once again. So there you have it. From the clueless dodo to the twice-extinct ibex, we've taken a wild ride through the history of what's gone. But can you just imagine that world? A world where you could be dodging flocks of passenger pigeons on your way to work, sharing a park bench with a dodo? It would be a wilder, weirder, and way more interesting place to live. Our planet would be a living museum, a place where the past walks, swims, and flies alongside us. And that's a world I'd love to see. If you could press a big red button and bring back just one of these extinct animals, which one would it be and why? Let me know down in the comments. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, everyone.